Hello and welcome to the Let's Talk Leadership podcast, the platform where inspirational leaders from the tech, digital and business world share their insights, experiences and learnings. I'm your host, Sandra Patel, and I'm thrilled to bring you conversations with some of the brightest minds and most passionate leaders in the industry from across the world. Whether it's about navigating challenges, driving innovation, or building diverse and inclusive teams, this podcast is all about learning from the very best. Each episode is an opportunity to hear real stories of success, personal growth, and how our guests are giving back to the community. And it's also a chance for me to learn right alongside you. So get ready to be inspired, motivated, and equipped with the knowledge to take your leadership journey to the next level. Hello and welcome to the Let's Talk Leadership podcast. So in this episode today, we sit down with Clare Simpson, co-founder of Nexus and Sarvas Health, to explore her bold journey leading two pioneering health tech startups. Clare shares what motivated her to tackle two of women's healthcare's biggest challenges, closing the gap in women's health and addressing chronic disease misdiagnosis with AI-powered solutions. We dive into the realities of startup life, from highs of innovation to the tough leadership moments that come with building teams from the ground up. Clare opens up about the fundraising landscape, the unique hurdles female founders face, and how she's creating inclusive, mission-driven cultures at both companies. Whether you're passionate about healthcare, women's health, or the future of AI in healthcare, this conversation is full of inspiring insights and leadership lessons from a founder on a mission to drive real change. Hi, Clare, how are you?
Thanks, Sandra. How are you?
Good. I'm good, thank you. So we've obviously just done a little bit of an introduction from what I understand regarding your unique situation. I must say that I do find it quite unique. So I'm looking forward to exploring that further. But do you want to just give a little bit of a additional kind of, I guess, introduction and background, and then we can move into some questions?
Sure. What an intro. It's interesting from someone else's perspective. So I guess I found myself as a tech co-founder, which is a new title that I've not used before. My background is in data and analytics. So started off as a data analyst and looked after data, MI and data science teams for a long time, both in big corporates as well as in various startups, not just the ones I'm working in now. And what's underpinned my journey to where I am now is my absolute obsession with health and fitness. And I like to bring the data when I analyse my own health. I'm obsessed with data there as well.
Fantastic, brilliant, and such a great cause. To add value in an area that is underrepresented. There's not enough space and dedication in that area. But I think, I've alluded a couple of times, I've used the word unique, I think a couple of times now. Two startups at once. I don't think and I've had a lot of conversations with founders, particularly over the last 6 months to a year. I think you're the first that I've come across in a long time in this unique situation. So what made you take not just one but two on at the same time, sort of two health tech businesses, and how do you keep those plates spinning?
It's a good question. I certainly didn't intend to be in this situation. It was more a case of seizing the opportunities as they presented themselves. So I found Nexus.
Keep going.
I found Nexus whilst I was still employed. So I was working for a wearable startup. Actually, we pivoted into health AI. So I found it and I thought, this is really interesting. It's absolutely right up my street. Everything that I want to do, women's health, fitness, perfect for me. So I reached out to Leo, the founder, and said, I'd really love to help you here. Can I get involved? He said, yeah, great. Love to have you on board. Long story short, we agreed an advisory role, and I was going to do that in my spare time on top of my full-time job. They were actually looking for a co-founder at the time, but no one in the right mind, in my opinion, would give up a decent salary to go and work for free. So the advisory role was really much more suited to my situation. However, just a couple of weeks after agreeing that advisory role, the company I was working for went into administration. So my husband and I had a conversation about it and decided not many opportunities like this come across your desk. And it wouldn't be a better fit for me. So let's take the risk, dive in there full time and see what happens.
Yeah, I always say that everything happens for a reason, you know, and perhaps that was the reason.
So that was how Nexus came about, and then Sarvas was around the same time. So a bunch of colleagues from the company I was just mentioning, we'd done some work in healthcare AI. We built a ECG predictive model. We were working with a cardiologist that I know, and once the business folded, he was talking to us about opportunities in the space of heart failure. That's his speciality, and he was asking if our expertise and knowledge could be used to help with the big problem of misdiagnosis in heart failure. So my colleagues and I had a conversation, and we said, yeah, this is really important, and we think we can do it. So let's set up a company and let's see what we can do with this as well. So I felt really passionate about that as well, in that I wanted to help where I could. But coming on to the second part of your question about the plates, for me, it's a challenge. I'm not going to lie. It's really, really challenging, but I just make sure I'm aligning my skill set with what needs to be done. So I don't think it would be possible if you were a sole founder to do more than one. It's so full on. But because we're a team of co-founders, there's 4 for Nexus and 3 in Sarvas, is very much making sure that the work that needs to be done is done by the person with the best skill set for that. So my time does tend to be split on full time on Nexus, then with a more of a supporting role on Sarvas. I'm trying to do 1 day a week there. Because
that was going to be my next question. I was going to ask how, because I can imagine others that are listening thinking, well, how do you balance your time, you know, or do you flick from, which could be quite easily done, 1 hour, one business and the next to another, and you know, so
no, I'm trying to dedicate a day to Sarvas where my colleagues and I are in the same place, so we can talk about things more easily. The rest of the time it's spent on Nexus with the odd meeting here and there when I can make that work. But because both businesses are in the same sort of phase, Nexus is probably further along, but I've learned a lot from whenever I learn something about fundraising, I can apply it to both businesses.
So in some areas you can kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone, can't you? And there's some crossover there, which is always helpful.
And really the Sarvas work is about building the model and fundraising. So I'm helping with the fundraising, but while I've looked after data science teams, I'm not a data scientist myself, so I can't really support on that. That's for the data scientists. Whereas because of my knowledge and experience, I'm also a personal trainer. I'm much more able to get involved in the product development on the Nexus side. So that's why it's split in that way.
Yeah. Perfect. And that's I think we were saying before, women's health is often so overlooked and misunderstood. it'd be interesting to understand what your personal mission behind Nexus is, and why you feel this space is crying out for change.
Sure. Just thinking about that statement about women's health being overlooked, I learned recently that women's health used to be referred to as bikini medicine.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, I've not heard that before.
No, I've not heard that.
But what it demonstrates is that women's health is very narrowly thought of as reproductive health. It doesn't really
Yeah.
think about all of the other things that can go wrong with women's bodies. And there's a lot of stats around how long it takes for women to get diagnosed with those more female-specific conditions. Endometriosis, for example, I think it takes something like 8 years and 10 doctor's visits to get that diagnosis, versus something like prostate cancer, which only affects men, which is diagnosed within 2 to 4 weeks. And I know then they're not comparable diseases, they're very different. But that also happens in diseases that affect men and women. So heart failure, what Sarvas is looking at, is a prime example of that. It's chronically misdiagnosed anyway, but it's twice as likely to be misdiagnosed in females. And that's around the fact that the male body is seen as the default. The diagnostic criteria are based on men's bodies. So women just aren't presenting with the same symptoms. Their symptoms are more atypical, and that's why it gets missed. So all that's really important and gets me really angry. I don't know if you've read the book Invisible Women, but it talks about...
I haven't actually.
It's an excellent read. If you want to get equally angry. It talks about how what about the data gaps in all walks of life, and how most things, from product design to drugs to healthcare, are all based on the male body.
That's what gets me angry, because I've been as well, sort of. Do you know have you heard of Dr. Stacey Sims?
Yes, she was the reason for my absolute obsession in this.
That's what's happened to me. I'm literally going down that same journey. So I started listening to Dr. Stacey Sims maybe about 6 to 9 months ago. And I've been I've been working with like a personal coach, and he's male, and I said, can you listen to this podcast, because I said I really do think there's certain things that we may need to change based on this, and there's lack of research and studies and things out there on the female body. And it just kind of, he listened to it and then didn't really change anything. And I got that same old, well, it's what works for you, isn't it? What works for your body? And I'm just like, not sure it is actually. So yeah, I started getting angry about it. And then people just don't want to listen. They don't want to listen to the differences between how our bodies respond to certain things that we, and certain times of the day that we exercise, etc. I started getting so wound up by it all. But anyway, I'm digressing a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good example of how, as women, we really do have to advocate for ourselves.
Yeah. To be heard. Yeah, absolutely.
The Dr. Stacey Sims. So I came across her book Raw when, quite a few years ago now. I was really, really into health and fitness, but I was doing all sorts of crazy things. I was fasting, I was overtraining, I was doing all of the things that she told me to do. And I also didn't understand why sometimes I could go to the gym and I would feel amazing. And sometimes I would go to the gym and not do anything different and feel awful. And I really didn't understand it until I read her book. And suddenly I thought, gosh, hormones. Everybody thinks about having a period. Nobody thinks about what happens between the period and the next period. There's so much going on in your body. And if you speak to women, it never ceases to surprise me how little people know about what's going on. The fact people don't even know about ovulation, which is that actually the key moment in the menstrual cycle. Forget the period; that's relevant in a way. It's ovulation, which is the important event. I really educated myself on menstrual cycles, and that's when I became qualified as a personal trainer, because I felt really passionate about using that knowledge and then teaching others as well. And I did her course, Women Are Not Small Men. So she offered courses
Fantastic.
online, so I did that as well. And some of the things, not just in fitness, so just coming back to your question about my personal journey, so that was a big part of it, but there have been things I've done or not done which have had a lasting impact on my life that I put down to lack of education, lack of awareness of what was actually going on in my body. So really the thing that drives me more than anything is like raising awareness about women's bodies, the fact that there isn't enough information. I don't have all the answers, I'm still learning, but just raising that awareness that, do you know that mainstream advice does that really relate to you? Is that appropriate for you? Just, I think if we raise that awareness, it makes people question it more.
Absolutely.
So that,
I can clearly see your passion, which is fantastic and amazing, and that's, I think it brings us on quite nicely too, because I wanted to share. You've obviously got experience in the raising investment and funds side of things, which is always really helpful to share those lived experiences around. And from my experience, it's often investors buy from people. Like, obviously there needs to be a saleable product or service, but it then boils down to very much the person and how driven and passionate they are, particularly around the cause, which obviously I can see, we can see in spades here. So I believe, am I right in saying that you're in the middle of fundraising for both businesses at the moment? What's been the hardest part of, I guess, getting investors on board? And do you think female founders or co-founders experience or face extra hurdles?
It's a really interesting question, because I think is it 1% of VC funding went to females in 2024? Is that the stat?
It was
low,
pretty low. Yeah.
The conversation we had when I joined Nexus, because we've got there's 4 co-founders, 2 females, 2 males, but at the time it was really very much driven by Leo, and his concern was, I'm a man selling this women's health solution. So the thought was, we actually need equal female founders to be able to open up some of the female funds. So I'm not sure where we have that hurdle, because we are a 50-50 split, and in a way it was almost the opposite, because you've got the funds that are specifically looking to invest in females who are not going to prefer to invest in a male-driven company. But it's still been really challenging. I think because they're both at an early stage, so we're looking at pre-seed funds, but they often want you to be further along than it's really realistic to be at pre-seed stage. So because it's an app, they want you to be in the app store so they can look at downloads and usage. We're still in the
any like future potential pipeline, and which is quite difficult at that stage.
Yeah, that feels more like seed and beyond. So we get that feedback quite a lot. The other thing that is consistent is the polarization of the feedback. So we either get told that we are too niche because we're women's health, which always makes me laugh, or we're too broad, because what Nexus is addressing is the complexity of women's health. So feedback will be, well, you really need to narrow it down into a particular life stage or a particular condition. But that's what's broken, because what we need as women is something that moves with us through our life stages, so we don't have to switch from one app to another, and can deal with what we have discovered through our own research the common situation of overlapping symptoms and conditions. So
Mm-hmm.
we need something that takes into account everything that's going on for us, brings all of that data together,
We've
works.
almost got like one stop shop sort of thing for everything.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
when we get that feedback from investors, sort of our response to that is that's the point. The complexity
Yeah.
is the point. That's what we're trying to solve. So it's a challenge. On the Sarvas side, because it's a very different product, it's not a consumer-facing product. There's actually a lot of grant funding around for the kind of thing that we're doing. So it's all around preventative and early intervention in healthcare. And that's a massive agenda item for the NHS at the moment. So there's a lot of funding. So we are exploring angel investment for that one, but we're putting more of our energy into grant funding to get us to that sort of first stage of we've got proof of concept. How do we develop that? How do we access more data? How do we make that model more representative of the population? So very different strategies, but
Yeah. Okay, fantastic. And I'm sure you faced some tough leadership moments along the way, and even prior to the co-founding sort of stage of your career. But let's be kind of, I guess, real with this. It's startup life, it's not all about kind of wins and celebrations. It's a very difficult and tough journey. What do you feel has been your I guess toughest challenge, how hardest leadership challenge so far, and what did you do to get past it, or what would you do differently if that situation was to arise again?
So probably this is probably not the answer you were looking for, but my toughest challenge throughout this journey in the current startups and in the previous one that I've worked for is navigating IVF and miscarriage. So quite a personal answer. Startups need 100% focus and of your time. So it's really difficult to do that when you've got so much going on in your personal life that's emotionally draining in itself. So for me, it was a huge source of anxiety because with IVF, you never know exactly when your appointments are going to be. It's very reactive. There's lots of scans, and just the worry about whether or not those scans and those very important dates that can't be moved would coincide with an important business meeting. Just the baseline level of anxiety that brought is incredible. And then on the flip side, when that doesn't work out, either when a cycle fails or worse,
dealing with how you feeling at the end of that, and bouncing back and recovering, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's taking horrible phone calls and then going straight into a team meeting and having to be there for your team and your colleagues, like nothing's happened, because like most people, I operated in stealth mode for a long time. I told only very trusted colleagues, because my view was, if this journey doesn't work out for me, my career is all I've got. And I don't want people making decisions about what I can and can't do or what I should and shouldn't do based on an incorrect assumption that IVF always works out, because I'm an example of someone who it hasn't worked for. So not telling anybody and trying to still perform and be there was very, very challenging. And then when it went on the other side of that, when it doesn't work out, I've had 3 miscarriages, and that's about, well, how much time do you take to look after yourself and to grieve versus getting straight back, because there's always so much to be done, and that deciding what the right balance of that is quite difficult. Now, I was lucky that I've always enjoyed, apart from one example which we won't talk about, when this has happened to me, I've always enjoyed my job, and for me, it's distraction. But I know there are people in similar situations where they need that time. Work is just far too stressful, and they need that time, but they feel pulled into perhaps going back earlier than they should do. So yeah, for me, there's been lots of leadership challenges, but navigating that alongside building businesses is and managing teams, that's been the hardest thing that I've had to deal with.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And what, again, I'm going to use this word again, a unique situation. But actually, I think it's, first of all, I really appreciate you sharing, your personal journey and challenges that you've had alongside co-founding two businesses. And I can imagine, as we've discussed from my own first-hand experiences recently as well, that I feel you and hear you in terms of the level of anxiety and not, waiting for an appointment, realizing that you've got a meeting to get back to, and you've got that anxiety building up because you don't know if you're going to make it in time for that appointment. But then equally, you're trying to keep your anxiety levels at bay and your nerves and your stress levels, because obviously that's not, it's not conducive to a successful IVF cycle. So I absolutely kind of empathize with this situation. But and do you know what? I can imagine that I know you said at the start it was probably not the answer that I was looking for, but actually it was, because I want to share real life lived experiences that not particularly women, we don't share these as openly as we could do. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to give people this sort of platform to be able to talk about these things and share and hopefully help other women in similar situations.
Yeah, I made a personal pledge to myself not long ago to open up and talk about these things, because I find that whenever I open up about it, often the person I'm speaking to is or has experienced something similar, and often those people are quite lonely in their journey. And so if I can offer just that little bit of support to make them feel less alone, that's worth it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you very much for sharing that. Really appreciate it. So moving on, I think we'll move on to a little bit more around women's health still being an afterthought, which I think is quite a nice one to move on to. So there's lots of healthcare solutions out there, and there's more and more. As recently become an investor myself, and there's so many more new businesses popping up within that industry and sector. But I still don't think that they're properly considering women's bodies, as we've kind of just discussed. What would you say are the biggest gaps right now in women's health, and how do you feel Nexus is changing that?
Yeah, so there's two main problems that we're addressing at Nexus. The first one is that lots of women have symptoms, but they don't meet a diagnosable criteria. So when they go to the doctors, they're told everything's normal, but they're still experiencing symptoms. So without being able to get a diagnosis, they can't get the help that they need. So we're stepping up to plug that gap. And the second one is that as women, I don't know about you, but we use so many different apps for our health and fitness. I counted up the other day, I'd used 7 different apps before 9 a.m.
Wow.
But that's not just inconvenient and disjointed. It's a massive missed opportunity, because all of my data is split between those 7 different apps.
Yeah.
So I'm not understanding how, apart from when I do my own analysis, I'm not able to pull together, well, how are my hormones affecting my symptoms? How are my hormones affecting my performance in the gym? How are my hormones affecting my response to different foods? How is my food affecting my exercise? Like all of those things. So we're addressing both of those problems by delivering this coaching solution. So we've proven that coaching works. Dr. Kerry and Leo, my fellow co-founders at Nexus, they've been doing this for years. They've got loads of testimonials when they deliver this kind of coaching, where they take all of this data and they look at it and they work out what's probably going on for that individual, and then they coach them around lifestyle, nutrition, exercise. They get results. So number one is to digitize that, and then the second one is to actually get some value out of that data. So we can, by bringing it together and analysing it and giving you very personalised insights as the user, but also ultimately we want to be a research organisation as well, because we're in a unique position where we can collect that data across lots of different things. So we're formulating relationships with universities at the moment to help us deliver our research strategy, where we can actually take that data as a whole and then do some research that benefits all women, not just that one person.
Yeah. And that's not just based on men. Fantastic, love that. And yeah, I agree. I haven't counted mine, but I do use individual apps for all sorts of different things. Like I've got one alone just to track my periods and nothing else. So yeah, I'm sure I've probably got a similar number to yourself. So yeah, beyond the it just brings me on to my next question, actually. Quite nicely, I've just mentioned periods around cycle trackers. So Nexus obviously isn't just, and we've mentioned this a couple of times, isn't just another period app. It's not just another, kind of baby loss app, or, it's an all-encompassing, looking at all kind of stages of the cycle. So could you give some like real life situations, either around baby loss or menopause or post-pregnancy, fertility, etc., where it's actually been helping women? I think that'd be really nice kind of to share.
Yeah. So the ambition is to be the go-to coaching companion for every life stage, and that will adapt with you through those life stages. And I feel particularly passionate about that, especially when we get that feedback. Why don't you just focus on this? Why don't you just focus on that? Because I'm one of those women that falls through the cracks. I'm yet to find a good solution for tracking things and getting insights through IVF. What should I be doing when it comes to fitness? Nobody wants to talk about that. What impact are those injections, all those hormones having on all the other aspects of my life? And also, I'm yet to find any app that caters for pregnancy and baby loss in an adequate way. It's, there's some nice words in there for some of them, but they don't really give you anything other than that. Usually it's just, well, let's just turn all of these things off. But I still want that support. I still want help, management and coaching whilst I go through that phase. So rather than just go, we've got to start somewhere. So yes, we will probably, we are starting with sort of the more obvious people who've got menstrual cycles and perimenopause, because that's a big issue at the moment. But we feel very, very strongly that we need to build much better solutions for the women like me who fall through the cracks. So we're doing some research around what women need at every stage of their life, basically. The menopause one is interesting because there's a lot of attention on that in the media over the last few years. And I think it's like a lot of things, the pendulum swings from not at all to maybe a little bit too much. So there isn't really anything different you should be doing in menopause. It's just more important to be doing it, is my view. Strength training, high intensity cardio, exercise, eating lots of protein, all of those things we should all be doing anyway, but we get away with it a little bit more when we're younger.
So many women that don't, though, as well. I feel like I sound like a bit of a broken record sometimes with my family, my friends, and my sisters. They're both 10 years, well, one's 10, like 8 years older than me, the other one's 10 or 11, something like that. And they're not focusing on protein, they're not taking creatine, and like a few of my friends, and I just feel like a broken record because I just don't think there's enough support, information, guidance, and real life examples of where females, women have seen those longer term health benefits, and
Yeah.
that's the issue.
Yeah. And in this case, a lot of the data and research does exist. It's just no one's giving it any attention.
Yeah.
My social media is, I've created an echo chamber. So I feel like, oh, everybody knows about this stuff because it's just, I'm bombarded with it every day. But that's because of what I look at and what I follow.
Yeah, same. Mine's the same.
Yeah. And then when you venture outside of that world, you realise that actually nobody knows about this.
No, no, absolutely. If you could go back, what's the one piece of advice you wish you had or someone had given you before jumping into the startup world?
Probably that failure is the most likely outcome. Set my expectations. The current startups, I would say, are startups 3 and 4. I've done 2 wearable tech startups beforehand, but both of which didn't work out.
Right.
But when I went into the first one, I was quite naive. I thought, well, we've got this brilliant idea. Everyone's going to want it. Everyone's going to want to give us their money. And I was wrong. Also, that investors get impatient, because I think that was our issue with the first one. And in fact, probably the 2 wearable tech businesses that I worked for came down to the investors not seeing return quick enough. So it's about finding the right investors that are willing to go on that journey with you, and they see the bigger picture rather than just the ROI opportunity.
Yeah, and they're in it for long haul, aren't they? Longer term, so they're not as, like you say, impatient. I think that's I want to know what the percentage is of like startups in the first year. It's quite a shocking percentage, isn't it, of how many kind of do fail in the first year. Most don't make it past that, which is quite scary, but I think it's one of those kind of areas and subjects that's not as exposed as it possibly could be. But then equally, we want the economy needs us all to keep trying and keep pushing and keep driving. Cool. So keeping the fire on must be particularly challenging, given the personal challenge that you've been on as well. On the days where days, weeks, even, I don't know about you, but when I go into one of those holes, it can be more than a day, a few days, where everything feels like a real struggle. What keeps you pushing forward?
I think it's the fact that it's mission driven. It's not just a job. Well, it isn't really a job at all, but there's a bigger driver. I think, like I said before, I feel like I've made a lot of mistakes because I didn't have the right knowledge. So I feel so passionate that I want to change that. I need my mistakes to mean something, to help other people. And then, then I can be at peace with what's happened to me in my life. And when it is really tough, especially with 2 on the go, but I remind myself that not everyone gets this opportunity. So I feel like I'm in a very fortunate position where I could sacrifice a salary in the short term to do something that I really, really believe in, because I know plenty of people who would love to work for startups or start their own thing, but they just financially, they just cannot do it. So yeah, I think it's, when I'm on my darkest days, I remember it's a choice. And it's a choice I keep making over and over again.
Yeah, fantastic. Love that. Last question. Fast forward 5 years time. What does success look like for you?
Well, I think from Nexus's point of view, we would have members in the tens of millions using our app. Our brand would be synonymous with women's health. People would talk about it in that space like it's just always been there. We've talked about becoming partners with sort of big fitness events, which would be amazing. Things like High Rocks. We've got some High Rocks coaches in our advisory panel. And I would love that we've really made some progress on that research journey, and we've got some actual published studies that are making a difference that people are using. So that's my vision for Nexus. From a Sarvas point of view, I don't think I really spoke about what Sarvas is. So just quickly, it's an AI model that predicts the risk of chronic disease. We're starting with heart failure because of the misdiagnosis issue. So success here would be that model is adopted, and we have care pathways for people who are what's the word? Seen as high risk.
High risk,
So ultimately, we're looking for that change in clinical practice because at the moment, we're really underserving people with heart failure. And within 5 years, our growth plan for that business is quite aggressive. So the way that we've built our model, the USP, I suppose, is that we can retrain it, fine-tune it for different chronic diseases. So we do it for heart failure, but then we can do the same for diabetes, COPD, renal disease. So in 5 years' time, we should be well underway with solutions for all of those major chronic diseases.
Fantastic, brilliant. Absolutely love that. Making some change and impact to other people's lives, and it seems it's quite clear that that's really that's your mission, your the value that you want to add and give back to the community, which is fantastic. Thank you very much for sharing all of your experiences and your challenges and being so authentic with that, and obviously opening up with regards to your own personal challenges within women's healthcare. So really, really appreciate that, and thank you very much for your time. Hope you enjoyed coming on the podcast.
Yeah, my first podcast. Thank you.
Where is it? Congratulations. Fantastic. Thanks very much, and take care. Good luck on your journey. I look forward to seeing and hearing all about it, and I look forward to seeing that success in 5 years' time.
Oh, thanks, Sandra.
Thank you. Take care. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Let's Talk Leadership podcast. I hope you found it as insightful and inspiring as I did. A huge thank you to our guests for sharing their experiences and wisdom. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your network. It really helps us reach out to more leaders like you. If you're interested in joining me on the podcast or have someone in mind who you think would be a great fit, feel free to reach out and get in touch, as I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep leading with purpose, and remember, leadership is all about learning, growing, and giving back. Take care, and I'll see you on the next episode.